I want to pause for just a moment and ask you to turn to your neighbor, whoever's sitting next to you, and have a 1-minute conversation with your neighbor about the art contest. About the art contest, the flyer that we distributed. For those on Zoom, if you can hear me, please think about what you see on the flyer, and if there's anything you would notice or want to ask or talk about with someone, type it into the chat. I should have a bell. So, I have a question. What is your impression, or what is it, if anything, you notice about the art contest that's causing you all to talk so much about it?
Well, I said noted that they don't good CMRs because they started with the social security number, but they started with the submission, your art project, and then put the judges, and then put the social security number. You might have been more likely to do it. And also because it says the Weinberg at legitimate conduct plus. Okay.
Good points. Did anyone else notice anything?
Weinberg was spelled well.
That's right. Weinberg was spelled incorrectly. Does anybody else?
Well, the win big solicitation that people are being, offered something that seems maybe a little bit fantastical in terms of your typical art contest. We just for full disclosure do not have $10 million in our budget to give.
Don't give it away.
It's highly unlikely that Tom Hanks, Taylor Swift, and Barack Obama would be.
You never know who I know. Not this people, trust me. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that when you're looking at this, that there were some flags that were raised for you that didn't quite make sense on this flyer. Did it help you to turn and have to say to somebody, what about this? What about this? Does this look weird? Does this not feel right? Was it helpful to ask each other about what it was that you were looking at and its validity? Yes, okay, great. I'm seeing some nods. So this exercise really is in part to emphasize for everybody one of the 3 things that we really tell people to do, which is to talk to each other. There was a recent study that was done in Europe, which is, I think, what in part spurred this. They studied financial exploitation among older adults, and they found that the strongest way to combat financial exploitation, specifically stamp, I think,
I believe it was, yeah.
is for older adults to talk amongst each other. It's not coming from anybody else. It's really being able to turn to somebody and talk through whatever it is that you're seeing that you may be suspicious of. So we are launching a Scam Buster Buddy prevention type program, which is really basic and isn't much more than what you all just did. And that is to really know and turn to each other and rely on, pick a person. It doesn't have to be anybody. And use that person to just talk things out. They don't have to know more than you. They don't have to know less than you. It's just another person to help you formulate the ideas that really go to recognizing that this wouldn't make any sense and this is a scam. Okay, so
a comment just came on the Zoom about when you see the call from a scammer, there's no one around to talk to.
So let's address that because we will get to that. First, I want to just think about what are the key components that can help you identify a scam. So using this as an example, one of the key things that scammers do is they want you to act fast. They don't want you to talk to anybody else. That's an ideal situation for them. They want to get into your head and prey on your emotions. So, does anybody see anything in this art flyer that would indicate you need to do something quickly?
Prizes are limited, so act now.
Yes, exactly. You could win a prize, or there's limited prizes, so act quickly, right? What does that invoke? Hurry up! Make a decision quick. Don't stop and think about whether or not you're being scammed. Hurry up and get the money before it's all gone, right? That is a very classic scam tactic. Anytime you're seeing somebody saying, hurry up, or if you don't do this, then something's going to happen, that evokes fear. It evokes a need to hurry and go do something to fix the problem or fix the crisis that they're coming to you with. Secrecy. So that's another component. The reason I hesitate to ask also if everybody here has ever been exposed to a scam before is that if you have been scammed, you will likely feel tricked. And how do you feel when you feel like somebody tricked you? Right. You feel like, oh my God, how did I not get that? How did I not see? Why did I read it and think I was going to win a prize and I better hurry up? It's not you. It's them. It really is important to know that secrecy, fear, urgency, these are all not the way you should be feeling when communicating with your bank or communicating with the post office. And if you start to feel those feelings, that's a flag for you, that something must not be right about it. Other ways scammers get to you are any way they can, basically. And that can be any multitude of ways of communication. It can be in person. It can be over the telephone. It can be over email. It can be over text messages. I've gotten so many text messages all of the sudden from the post office, and now it's voting, and I don't know which ones are scams and which ones aren't, or when to click or when not to. And even though I know this work, I still question myself because it's from the Social Security Administration, and that's my identifying factor, and that's my taxes, and if anybody gets that, that's a problem. So I go into a panic mode when I see something that looks like it could be from them. Just the words, your Social Security number, make me feel a little bit like, who has it and why? So my reaction is to feel emotional about it. And again, that's a key. Social Security Administration's not texting me about my taxes. And in fact, in that situation, I probably called John. I'll call my colleagues, just so you all know, because this is something, it is one of the ways we talk about financial exploitation and elder abuse. But what makes this topic so different is that everyone is susceptible to scams. There's no bias in any way. Where it becomes a problem and a more significant issue for older adults is, one, they may be targeted more because who is the wealthiest among the citizens of the United States? It's older adults. And also, there are ageist assumptions about technology and older adults, and there's some not ageist assumptions about technology and older adults. And scammers do this as their full-time job. They didn't get you the first time, well, they'll come back. They're just going to come back bigger and better and stronger, and now know you won't fall for that one thing, so now they're going to try the next thing. Please do not feel, as much as you are able, shame associated with being scammed. Trust me, everybody has questions when it comes to their emotions, when it comes to looking at information, when it comes to changes. Since when did we get text messages about elected officials, actually? And I think those are valid. There's new ways of communication. There's new things happening. And so it's hard to always know what is valid and what isn't. And that's okay. And if somebody falls for it, it's not your fault. Talk about it. Make other people aware of it. Report it so that maybe it stops it from happening again. And maybe you'll get some of your money, personal ID, whatever it may be, back. So these are the various ways that we were talking about. Scammers will try to have access to you and use the information that they want from you. So what do they want? They want your money, they want your personal information, and they want to access your accounts. Okay, I talked about this, that there's a change in trends and that now the use of technology has really increased the number of scams that we're seeing. You can see here the amount of dollars lost to scams really make this a crisis. Wouldn't it be wonderful if those billions of dollars that were lost to scams could be reinvested back into us or to the people they were taken from? It's amazing to me that we're in a deficit and you look at the dollars that are being scammed from people. Okay, we can move on.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about some of the individual types of scams, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. And, we could sit here and do a 5-hour presentation on different types of scams and not touch on all of them. And by the time we walked out of there, scammers would have invented 3 new types of scams to try and solicit you. And so we want to just give a little bit of the flavor. And I think on the previous slide that Deidre was talking about, we saw a lot of the key elements of this, which is really understanding what is it that the scammers are trying to get from you. A lot of the design of these scams are tactics and window dressing on what is at the core of this. Parting you from your money, getting information from you that they can use to steal money, or getting access to your device. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how that presents in some of these common types of scams. Package delivery scams. I think this is one we hear about increasingly. People get a text message or an email. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but I have a lot of e-commerce where I'm getting stuff delivered constantly. And on its face, it seems plausible. Your package was out for delivery and we weren't able to do it. Please send us $2 to redeliver. And sometimes it seems so innocuous. Well, $2, that's not a big deal. It's worth the headache of not going down to FedEx or to the post office. Well, really what they're doing is they're trying to get information from you, right? They're trying to get you to click on that link to give your bank account number or your credit card number. It's not about the $2 you sent. It's about the information that you shared. Or maybe even just by reacting to it, now you're on a list of people that further scams can be solicited. So the best advice that we can give is don't click that link. Try and keep your own records. If you know that you had something that you ordered that you were waiting on that hadn't been delivered, contact the retailer directly or contact the postal service, as unpleasant as that might be, or the carrier who is doing it. Don't give information to that person. And again, they're always going to change. Before it was about things being held up in customs. Now it's going to be your delivery is subject to tariffs and you have to pay the tariff directly to it. That's not how it works, but it's just plausible enough because it's connecting to things that are out there in the world that it just gets you to think for a moment, well, maybe that is right. And I don't want to miss that delivery. And then you fall for the scam. Charitable giving scams. This is one we see in some ways. It can be very seasonal at the end of the year when we talk around the holiday time, when it's a season of giving, we see increased solicitation of these charitable giving scams, but they're happening all the time. 2023, which is the last year we have numbers for, Americans gave $375 billion to charity. If a person can siphon off just a small portion of that, that's a huge payday for the scammers. And they're going to appeal to your emotions. There's going to be a tragic story. Maybe it's something tied to something you're aware about in the news, something that's going on in the world or in our country that you're aware of and that you have an emotional reaction to where you want to give and you want to be charitable. And they're going to tap into that, either by posing as a charity that doesn't exist or by making it look like they are representing a charity that does. It's the American Red Cross, and then you click on the link and it goes to a webpage that kind of looks like the American Red Cross. And if you're not carefully looking at the web address to see where it is, it at all appearances looks like it might be a legitimate charity. It's also difficult because a lot of times people might not recognize that they've even been scammed. We give to a charity and you feel good about giving to the charity, but you don't follow up to see if they actually received your money. Maybe you want that document to put into your tax return next year, but for a lot of people, it's the act of giving that was the thing. And they're not going to know that they were even scammed because that money went in their mind to a charitable purpose and they don't know any better. But now they might have information. You might have given your credit card information. There's a lot of risk there. So if you want to give and there's a cause you believe in, take yourself off. Go directly to that organization yourself. Go to their webpage yourself. Call the number yourself. Don't respond to that solicitation if you feel like it's something that connects with you that you want to give. Government impersonation scams. Deidre talked about this a little bit. I think we see this again, whether it's someone presenting to be from the IRS saying you haven't filed taxes. or from law enforcement or an elected official. A lot of times these operate around fear. You haven't done something and you are going to be subject to penalties, or the FBI is investigating you and they're going to arrest you. As a general proposition, that's not how things work. No one's going to reach out to you and let you know that, hey, the FBI is investigating you, just wanted to give you a heads up. Or, I think when we look at the world right now and our government, I think it's hard to believe that that there are people who are employed by the federal government who have time to be sending text messages to you. So just be on your guard. And again, if you're concerned that it's something that is legitimate, contact that agency or that organization yourself and verify that information. And there's no harm in saying, it's a phone call or not responding to a text message. Just take that time to start that conversation yourself. Romance scams, this is a very difficult one because it preys upon a very powerful emotion that we have, the need for human connection, and for people who are maybe isolated and lonely and are looking for that connection can fall prey to scammers who are really holding themselves out as being, a person who has a legitimate bona fide relationship with the older adult. And it's difficult for a variety of reasons because of that emotional connection. It could be very hard to break through if you've had a family member or a friend who's experienced this, to get them to see the scam for what it is. And also, it's an entry point for further scams. We've had clients where, eventually the person realized, okay, this is not a romantic relationship I'm with the person. They try to terminate that relationship, and then they hand it off to another scammer who contacts them and says, just so you know, you have been sending money to a drug dealer in Venezuela, and now the FBI is investigating you. And now it's another scam. And they're going to keep trying and keep going until they can get every dollar out of you by scaring you, by manipulating you, by preying upon this relationship at the end of the relationship and all the emotions that go with that. It's also something that people feel a lot of shame around. All of these, again, create emotions of shame when somebody recognizes it. But in particular, when you've invested something of yourself in a relationship and realize it's not what it appeared to be, it would be very difficult to talk about that with anybody, let alone to go to law enforcement or to a family member or friend to discuss that.
And I have to make one comment about the romance scams. They're particularly harmful because they prey on the emotion of love and loneliness and isolation. As an older adult, your world will get smaller because family may move away or your peers may not age as you have, etc. So that already is something that older adults are facing. And the opportunity to feel love or feel attention or get that really good feeling when you're otherwise possibly feeling lonely, if your partner has passed away or if your partner is in a hospital or somewhere else, it could be really, really hard. And then once you develop love, as we know, in many ways, all bets are off because then you've now invested into that person. You personally feel attached to that person, even if that person doesn't really exist. And, one thing PD has been great. They have really upped the resources and been much more aware of the different kinds of scams to the extent anyone can keep up with them. But we did have a case where there was a really bad romance scam, and this woman thought that she was in love with somebody who she thought was in Afghanistan working for Amnesty International. And he promised, this was also, just as an aside, it doesn't matter, but she was a very educated woman. She was a psychologist and lived a life and played many musical instruments and was very articulate and knew her literature and all of that kind of, doesn't matter. She was lonely and she wanted a friend, and this guy over email reached out to her and she was like, oh, sure, I'll chat with this person. And one thing led to the next. He ended up saying to her that he was not going to be able to leave Afghanistan without her help. And so she sold her home in Brooklyn and she moved into a hotel, wired him all the money with the thought that once he got out of Afghanistan, he was going to move to Georgia and they were going to have a home and a life together in Atlanta. So this was the plan. But in some ways, it could sound very enticing and very like there's a fantasy attached to that would be wonderful if it were to be true. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And when this goes to reporting a little bit, when we were talking with the local police officers about what to do, they initially did not want to charge anything because they said, this is a woman who made a bad decision. She had a bad boyfriend, and it was a bad decision, and so therefore there's no crime because she gave her money away because, she loved this guy. And we, of course, pushed back to say, no, this is fraudulent. He isn't who he said he is. That's a problem. That's a scam. So this shows you a little bit of how the emotional piece of it can really be very, very confusing. And we've had cases where someone doesn't want to sever the relationship. The police have showed up at their home. The DA's office has showed up at their home to say, the guy that you love is not the guy that you love. And the woman it didn't matter. It didn't matter. She was still going to believe it and want it and give him money.
Yep.
Um,
Across the board, these scams, they work because they fill a need, whether it's for money or for security or glove. That gives an entry point for a scammer to insert themselves into your lives. I think this is really at the heart of what we're trying to convey to folks, which is a general approach that hopefully will help prevent scams in the first place. And what you see up on the screen here are our general tips for you all if you have a scam solicitation or something that you suspect is a scam solicitation. And the first one is just to slow down. Again, they're trying to create a sense of urgency, and that's an intentional tactic. The faster people act, the less time they have to think rationally about what they're being presented with and to act on that emotional response. And it's that is really putting people most at risk of falling for these scams. So take a moment, read what it is. Don't act immediately. There are very few things that you are going to get an unsolicited piece of communication from some person you've never spoken with that are actually urgent pieces of information that you need to act on. And that right there is a red flag. Ask a friend. This is something that we've been really trying to work towards and build up to get people to have a willingness to have candid conversations about scam solicitation and to not feel like there is a particular shame attached to being solicited for a scam or even falling for a scam. This is something that happens every day to people across all walks of life, of all ages, of all educational levels and backgrounds. And we want to destigmatize it so that people feel comfortable going to somebody and say, hey, look, I really don't know. Is this a scam? And by doing that, you've already taken time to slow down. You vocalized it like you all did with the scam poster before the art contest. And when you talk about it, it sometimes just reinforces how ridiculous some of the scam solicitations are when you really take the time to think about them. And then don't respond. I said this throughout with all of these. If you feel like there might be something there, don't give any information to that person. And you'd be surprised, the littlest things, little pieces of information. Scammers are compiling a profile of you. What's your address? Verified. Email address? Verified. Even little things. Where you went to high school? What was the name of your first pet? Those are security questions. If they needed to two-factor authenticate or get into a thing, it's just little pieces of data. And everything that you give a scammer is something that might be used to either create the illusion that they know who you are or to use to access information. So don't give anything away. Certainly don't give money. Don't click because it may install some sort of malware on your computer that gives access or send you to a website that may look like it's a real thing where you enter information that they're able to get. Just don't engage. Don't reply. Even reply puts you onto a list. This person, it's a real cell phone, and this person replies. More scam solicitations are going to come your way. What about AI? Just a really quick show of hands. How many people in this room have seen an image that they know with certainty was generated by AI, by artificial intelligence? For those of you at home, we got maybe about half and half. Well, hopefully, if anyone asks you that question in the future, you will all be able to say yes, because all the images that were on this slide deck before were all generated by AI. And I did it in about 30 seconds with a very simple prompt. I am not a tech whiz. It does not take a lot of knowledge to be able to do that, to create something that is facially believable. And you're going to see this more and more. AI is not a scam. It's going to be a part of our life for better or for worse. But it is a tool that makes scam solicitation more effective, to tailor images that look like the aftermath of a disaster or to impersonate people that you know. You know, one of the things I think there's a lot of concern about is people taking little pieces of someone's voice and creating a AI-generated version of somebody's voice. So you think you're talking to your grandson, and it's really an AI-generated piece of code. So just something to be aware of. I don't want to scare people, but we need to be aware of the capabilities and to stay on top of understanding how AI can be used and how it may be a part of some of these scams. Action plan if you've been scammed. I think this is an important part. Obviously, prevention is the best medicine, and not getting scammed is what we're hoping for. But inevitably, these things happen. And what are you going to do? The first thing you need to do is you need to understand what is the risk. And it goes back to what we saw before. What did I give to somebody? Well, if I gave a duffel bag full of cash to somebody on the street, there might not be further risk of somebody scamming you from that particular interaction. If what I gave them was my social security number, well, that's a very different risk profile for you to think about what you would be doing to react. Same thing if they now have access to your computer. So understand and try and identify what it is that the scammer got from you. And then from that, you can try and build a game plan for how to react. So depending on what it is, maybe it's contacting your financial institution. We'll hear from some folks in a little bit. We'll tell you a little bit from the banking end what that might look like. Changing passwords to your accounts, closing accounts in some instances, signing up for credit monitoring, or things that are about identity theft. If what you've given is information that could be used to open credit cards or things like that. There are also a lot of tools that are available, and I think some of them are on some of the materials that you got from the council member's office. There's certainly some other resources that we have on our website we could steer people to. I think that the best one that we tell people about is Department of Justice Office of Crime Victims has a national elder fraud hotline. By calling that, you can get hooked up with a case manager who can help walk you through where to report and some of the resources that are available. There's a similar one through the FTC for people who've been the victims of identity theft that can, again, walk you through a checklist of actions to take. Call the NYPD. Talk to the crime prevention officer or the older adult liaison in your precinct and get access to resources here locally. There's a lot you can do.
These are good action steps. But as John mentioned also, I think in Councilmember Brewer's scam prevention flyer that went out today, the guide, and it has some really great information in there. It will tell you about where to report and action steps to take.
And share. I should say that too. Share this information. If it happens to you, talk about it with your family and your friends so that they can be better educated and learn from your experience as well.
Our last speaker before to do our Q&A is going to be Raphaëlle Monty, the Deputy Chief of Elder Abuse from the Manhattan DA's office.
Hi, thanks for having us. My name is Raphaëlle Monty. I'm the Deputy of the Elder Abuse Unit at the Manhattan DA's office, and I work primarily on financial exploitation of elders. So thanks to all the prior speakers who covered really everything there is to say about scams. Really want to echo, be careful, speak to other people. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And really that there is no shame. And like shame is really, I think, the biggest thing that keeps people in a cycle of not wanting to talk to others, not wanting to ask questions. So really prevention, as you guys said, is the number one thing. Sadly, really, there is not much to be done once the money is gone. We get a ton of reports about scams. We have a helpline, and we also both phone and email. I encourage you to call us, email us if you'd like. But if it's a scam, in all likelihood, by the time you get to us, the money is abroad. And there's very little that we can do to help you. If you think you've been scammed, as has been previously said, I encourage you to act very quickly. Contact the police, contact your bank. If you sent a wire, if you sent money in any way, a check, it may be possible very quickly to reverse the transaction. But once the transaction has gone through again, it's really highly unlikely that we'll be able to get the money back. And it's highly unlikely that we will be able to find the person who's really behind. That person you're speaking to is very likely in India, in China, and we just aren't able to find that person. So we also do a lot of cases on what we call trusted persons. So what we focus on a lot in the cases we bring are bankers, accountants, children, friends, neighbors, home health aides, really the people who immediately have access to older persons in New York County. How we get our cases, as I mentioned, we have a helpline, email, and phone. people will call and the victim themselves will report to us. We often get concerned family members, concerned friends who will call. We get referrals from banks who will tell us there's been just strange activity happening in one of our clients' accounts. Our client is starting to come to the bank with this person over the last few months, and they're taking out a lot of money. It seems unusual. We get referrals from the Adult Protective Services, from Weinstein Center, places like that that will just realize something is going on with somebody that they are dealing with. Those are the cases that we try to focus on because, again, we have a target who is local and who we can actually prosecute. As you know, there is just a lot of financial crimes happening against older adults. Unfortunately, we don't have endless prosecutors to take cases. And so we really try to focus on, again, the trusted persons, people who have access to older adults and that we want to make sure are not repeatedly committing these crimes. I'll end because I think we're ready for Q&As.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Here are some questions here.
Sure. Could I just start with one question that I said we would get back to about reporting when there's no one else there and you answer the phone and you wonder, who can I talk to if I'm here by myself? My advice in that situation is to say, I have to get back to you about that. What's your name and phone number? I'll call you back. Don't let them take control of the conversation. They're calling you because they want something from you. You dictate the terms of what that relationship is, whoever it is, and you say, I can't answer that right now. I'll get back to you. Take the time to speak to somebody. It's really well worth it. Okay, I'm going to read the questions, and I guess we'll see who's best to answer. I have heard them saying anything, for example, quote, hello, can lead to creating a long discourse via AI, apparently from you. Is this true? Yes. I am also aware of scam and is now why my aunt answers the phone. Because she doesn't want to speak and have her voice replicated.
And sometimes as we've understood it, I haven't seen this directly or experienced it myself, but from what we've heard and heard people talk about, sometimes what the person asks as an initial question is something where you answer yes to. And it's the yes then that they could use. They have that little snippet of your voice and can then be used to impersonate you at other places. So it's absolutely a thing. I don't have any information about how prevalent it is or how people have been successful in taking that and using it effectively at financial institutions, but it is absolutely a real threat. I think generally, if you have a phone that's calling you, you'll recognize the number. Don't pick up unless there's something you're expecting.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. If you get a call from an unknown number, just let it go to voicemail. If it's somebody who legitimately needs to speak with you, they will leave you a voicemail and then you can call back if you think it's of importance. On AI, I think we've heard a lot in the news about scammers creating AI messages that sound like they're coming from your grandchild and then your grandchild calls. Honestly, I haven't heard of a lot of that actually happening. I think the grandchild scam, a lot of times, is honestly much easier, where they will call and they'll say, hi, I'm representing your grandson, he's been arrested. And just because you're so scared or whatever, you'll say, Jimmy's been arrested. And then they say, yes, Jimmy. And you will think, oh, they know Jimmy. But it's because you've just said it and because you're just so surprised. So I think what we see is just scammers are very good psychologists and they know how to extract information from you. And exactly as you said, AI is just really a tool. So it's not that like AI all of a sudden is creating scams. Scammers are just very good at extracting information and creating false senses of urgency from you. And what we see is like there are not many perpetrators who are local. People who are in the US, it often comes back to places in Alabama and Florida and Texas. And again, ultimately, it's mostly abroad, which is what, as I said, there really is not much that the local law enforcement could do because once we follow the money, it's almost always going abroad. There may be the local courier who came to pick up the money. And sometimes we do prosecute those people, but oftentimes they will just say, I picked up a bag. I had no idea what was in the bag. I gave it to somebody. I don't know. The only thing I have is this phone number. We investigate the phone number, and all the IP addresses go back to India. So there just isn't as much that we can do criminally speaking locally.
I did attend, I remember the first time, Andy Mao, who I believe was a federal prosecutor with the DOJ, Department of Justice. I attended a conference and he spoke all about the actual arrests that were happening internationally based on reports that had been made. So, and the fact that I was excited about it means that I feel like it had not been happening, but don't give up, still report. Many of the places that we suggest reporting to are federal agencies. You're reporting it and you don't hear back, or you don't know where the report's going to. But at least for the agencies that we've suggested, and I believe the agencies that are listed on Councilmember Brewer's scam guide, in fact, there's one federal number where they assign you a case manager if you've been scammed. So there really is an increase in effort and recognition for the amount of money that's being taken. I mean, how can we ignore it? So, and it is an international, but if you report it to the federal level, they're able to follow up to a certain extent. So we encourage you to report it. I believe we have some questions from the chat online, so we still have more from the audience as well, but why don't we turn to our audience at home?
Yeah, we do. And first, I just want to flag that in our resource packet, there are the 3 agencies of how to freeze your credit. So there's those resources in there that talks about also what that means, check the scenarios in which you would need to do it. But that's all in the packet, the scam prevention packet that you took here, and it's also online. And we'll distribute it in the council members' newsletter, and it's on the website. We'll make sure you get a copy.
And someone on the chat just helpfully provided the name that escaped me, which is a fraud alert with the credit reporting agencies.
What about deletes?
Yes, delete.
Yeah, that was a question, was should you delete scam messages when you get them, or should you keep them?
I keep them if you have clicked on it or if you've done something that will cause you to need to go back and look at the origin of how whatever happened. Personally, I have way too many things. I delete, report, block. Yeah, block too. But it is important to report, even if you don't feel like each time, what's Apple doing with this? Is anybody doing anything? Because the truth is that even if it's just one click that you've now done for Apple, it adds to their data. And Apple does have to be held accountable to a certain extent for the kinds of commerce that are happening over the phones that are now out there. And they want to be, how great would it be if Apple phones were able to say, you cannot be defrauded on an Apple phone? They need that information. And we get some good ones here. Is electronic banking really safe? Is it better than using the mail?
My personal opinion, yes. Electronic banking is safer. Because as I just mentioned, the scams that we've experienced through the mailboxes, the sending mail, not only with them being able to put the sticky substance on the mail, but when it's lost, right? That those same things are happening when mail is lost. When you have created your own online account and you have your username and password, as long as you don't click into anything and you don't share your information, you are safe. Because only you would have your information, and you want to create something that's not easy for fraudsters to get. You don't want to use your personal information. You don't want to use numbers in your social security or your date of birth or your mother. You don't want to use any of that type of information will create the password. But in today's society, yes, I think that online banking is one of the most safe and securest methods to pay bills.
As far as creating passwords, we should all be using password managers. So it's an app that you can download, you can use it on your computer, And basically, it will create passwords for you. Passwords that are 20 characters are impossible to guess. And you will just use this as a central place to keep all of your passwords. And then you only have to remember one password, which is the password for the password manager. This is what we should all be doing. I don't actually use it because I don't follow my own advice, but you really should. And especially for financial accounts. And I think we should all be very careful. Everyone will tell you don't reuse passwords. And that's the good thing about the password manager, because you don't have to keep creating new ones. But if you're not going to do that, look, it's fine. If you want to use the same password for the New York Times and Wordle and this and that, fine. Do not reuse passwords for your banks. Those are the ones you really don't want to be easy to guess. As far as using online banking, to me, as much as you can do in person is the best. So if you have to send a check, take it to the post office. It's good for you. Walk to the corner, walk to the post office, put it in there. If it's at all possible for you to physically give a check to somebody, do that, because at least you know who the person is, you've given them the check, it's not getting lost. I recently bought an apartment. I walked a check into the lawyer's office and he looked at me like I was crazy. I am not wiring all of my bank account to somebody for the one bank number to be wrong and all of a sudden all my money is gone. So yes, it's very convenient and sometimes there's nothing else to be done, but oftentimes it's fine to be old school. It's fine to just tell people, look, I just don't really know. It's fine to play dumb if it keeps you safe. You're not dumb, you're just being old school, and just because it's convenient to do everything online does not mean you have to do everything online. Yeah, absolutely, and this is something that we see all the time. I would say you should not give direct access to your finances to anyone. If there is a legitimate reason for somebody, for example, your old pal Faye is going to go shopping for you. Great, you can get her cash, you can give her a reloadable card so that you control how much is on the card. You shouldn't give somebody, here's my credit card, because now they can do whatever they want with it. And also, you've given them the credit card, and so sometimes your bank will say, well, you gave them access, so we're going to use it. So you really want to be careful. If somebody really does, for whatever reason, need their old access, I would say, we'll talk to your bank. And what you might be able to do is give somebody another credit card in their name that is tied to your account, but that has limits on it. You should never make somebody a joint account holder on your bank account, because then they could just take all. So you really be careful if people are helping you out, make sure that you're limiting how much they actually have access to. And I completely agree with what you both said. Somebody is helping you out, that's great, but if they're stealing from you, that's elder abuse and that's crime. And you shouldn't have to feel like the only person in the world who's going to help you is somebody who's stealing from you. There are lots of other people in New York City who will help you.
We've got a couple action-oriented questions. How can I find out if it is the right email coming from the government? Call the number. Go call a number that's associated with that agency. Go to the website of that agency. Most agencies are not emailing. It's just not the way, like the Social Security Administration, they're not sending me personalized emails. The part that I personally struggle with this is that changes a little bit because, we didn't used to have email. Now we've introduced a new way to communicate. How can we tell that the people communicating with us are legitimate? I've gotten emails from the DMV reminding me the night car needs to be inspected, and I thought it was a scam from the DMV because everything else that they sent me is a scam over text. Well, guess what? My car needs to be inspected. But I verify it before I went into it. I looked at the date on my inspection sticker, and I was like, oh, they're right. So verify it in alternate ways. If you want specific advice on a particular agency that you don't know how to contact, I would say reach out to any of us. Reach out to Councilmember Brewer. And we'll be able to help identify if an agency is in fact an agency and how to get to that.
I would say, across the board, there's no agency or organization that requires you to interact with them via DM, right? There is convenience associated with that, but, I think we get so wrapped up in like email is just a part of our everyday lives. Like you're saying, nobody's forcing you to conduct business with anyone via email. It's not something that you're comfortable with. Don't engage with them via that. Some things are trained towards that only are required people to go in person to the local Social Security office. It's just not something that you need to feel like you're obligated to respond in the same medium of communication, whether that's text message or a phone call. You can initiate what feels comfortable and where that what you're doing is with the right recipient of that information.
Okay, here's a good one. What do I do if a scammer has gotten access to my social security number?
Like we said earlier, report, because that's ID theft, grand larceny, that's, a number of things. Obviously, it's a case-by-case basis. It all starts with a report. Call 911, go to the precinct, and just give them as much information as you may have, and the detective, they'll take care of that. It unfortunately happens.
Social Security office is also aware that this is happening, and you can go to their website and find ways to report it with them, because they also need to know that your number has been compromised, and they will direct you to the various ways in which your Social Security number could be used so that you could put alerts and have an awareness about what that can look like. I would also always suggest getting your credit report again. Once you know somebody has that personal information, unfortunately, they could do all kinds of things to create an identity, a false identity around just your Social Security number. And so then that could lead to credit cards being opened up, or bank accounts, or loans, or that kind of thing. So regularly checking your credit would be a really important step.
I'm not sure this will make anyone feel better, but all of our social security numbers are the black web. So in some ways, I would say, welcome to the club. It's not great. Certainly don't head out your social security numbers, but I think in some sense, it doesn't really change the basic advice. So check your credit. It says, make sure there isn't any activity that is not what it should be. You shouldn't be giving information to people, but if somebody wants it bad enough, most of us, again, and there's just been so many frauds with so many of the big agencies that a lot of our information is already. And again, social security number in and of itself is worthless. It's people will try to pretend like they are you and use your credit. So if you're monitoring your credit, if you have a scam alert, all of these things, then they can't do it. Or if they try to do anything with it.
And it's that accumulation of information too. It's your Social Security number plus your date of birth, plus your residence, your address, and your phone number. And the more that profile has pieces of data, the more likely they are to be able to successfully impersonate and steal information and have access to things. So you want to be on your guard when you're aware that one piece of information is out there. Be extra mindful of the other risk factors about not getting more information, even things, like I said, they could see completely innocuous, like the names of relatives or things like that. Those are, again, little data points that can be used to help a person, a scammer.
Do you get a new number?
No.
So what are you supposed to
Freeze your credit. Freeze your credit with the agencies.
file tax?
The fact that somebody else knows your social security number doesn't mean you can't use it. You just want to make sure they're not using it.
Can they get just the last 4 digits and then tell you those and give you the impression?
Yes. You should never be giving anybody your social
Just to get a little before to tell.
Under credit card statements, it's often just before last digits. Oh, I'm thinking of our cash numbers.
Yeah, you might see that in places, and that's a way that scammers are going to try and make you think that they're legitimate. Oh, they already have my Social Security numbers, so these are real people, so I can share with them freely. So yes, they're going to use that kind of information, even if it's just the last score. Mr. Smith, can you please confirm these are the last 4 digits of your Social Security number? Yes. Okay, now that just link your phone number to that Social Security number. And again, it's just another link in the chain to try and build that profile of information. So the other argument that looks like, oh, of course, well, they have this, then they must know more about me. Why are they asking?
A couple other action-oriented ones. Somebody tried to report a scam to the FBI, but has not heard back. Should this person report the loss to the IRS? I would say look at this scam guide that is just given to you, because in there is some great information about federal agencies. We really like the one that assigns a case manager to you. I think what we all feel often is that we report it and never hear again. So one, I'm never getting my money back. Two, what was the point of reporting it? And three, now where did all that information go? That's why I like the one where they have a person attached to you, and then they can guide you through what needs to be done. That's a federal agency, so that's going to look very different than going to Office of Vasquez. Who's going to give you the local resources and particular people and ways to report something here, as was mentioned by our prosecutors. A lot of these crimes are international or across state lines, which then brings it to a federal issue.
You should report to the federal agencies that you have in the guide. You should not expect to hear back from that. Why it's really useful to report is that goes into its central database that a lot of law enforcement have access to, including us. So if I get someone coming to me, say, this phone number contacted me and I was scammed, and if I start prosecuting that case, what I can do is I can log into the federal database, I can look up the phone number, and I can say, oh, there's 50 other people who have recorded this. One, it's definitely a scam. Two, if any of those people are also local, then I can contact them and say, hi, I'm investigating this case. It looks like you might also be a victim. And so we can tie cases together that way. So the premise of those is to really create the database and the knowledge. It's really not that you put it in and immediately the FBI is going to come to your door and say, hi, we're prosecuting this case. Because they're really busy, there's limited law enforcement to go around. But it is still extremely useful so that we can have a sense of what's happening. And also sometimes they can help us tie, there's obviously lots of different scanners, but sometimes we can see the same networks might be using these phone numbers and whatnot.
And in terms of expectations, it's important to realize even if there is a successful prosecution, the odds that you're going to recover any of the lost funds are exceedingly low. And so just understanding that what reporting does is trying to prevent future scamming and giving that information to law enforcement so they can combat it. There's value in that, but it's not going to result in somebody getting $10,000 back to their bank account.
But Andy Mao from Department of Justice said he's had some successful press, so there's hope.
Yes, prosecutions absolutely. And I would say, do they have money to pay in restitution? Always another question. And there are resources too on the state level. We have a state agency for the Office of Victims of Crimes that can give compensation to victims of crimes who are reported. And so there is some recourse. It's not going to make you whole, especially depending on how much money you've sent, or if you get in, access to information that could be used to create identity theft. But there are things that you can do that can maybe restore at least a little bit monetarily to you. But the first step is reporting. It's going to the NYPD and it's going to law enforcement and starting that process of creating a record of the crime.
As far as reporting to the IRS, you should talk to your accountant, but there are definitely sometimes if it may be worth telling the IRS when you're filing your taxes that you have been defrauded or you've been the victim of a scam because you may be able to get reduction in your taxes again. I'm not an accountant, but it is worth mentioning it if you are a victim to your accountant when you're doing your taxes for that year.
I believe we are almost at time. Last question.
I think we're going to answer the last question from the chat, which is that on the web, you can find a lot of personal information about yourself, your date of birth, your address, and a lot of other things that I kind of feel uncomfortable about. How can you delete this info from the web? Or is it okay that it's out there? How should I deal with that?
I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that. I tend to think it's out there, sort of social security number. I use a Yahoo email. I figure everything is gold. But that's so compromised. Just try to be careful with the accounts that I have.
I agree. That information is out there, and I think, as everyone will say, it's more about trying to think about the ways that information can be used in protecting yourself.
And I think it's also to just be comfortable with everything that you do, right? So don't try to get into something you don't understand, right? If you don't understand cryptocurrency, don't open a Coinbase account. You don't need a Coinbase account, right? So again, walk checks into a bank, like do the old school thing because that's what you feel comfortable with. Don't email with the DME. Go into the DME and talk to them in person, right? Scammers are really preying on forcing you into urgency and doing something that you will feel comfortable with. And there's no shame in that. I don't really understand cryptocurrency either. That's fine. I don't need to use cryptocurrency in my day-to-day. I can pay for my coffee in cash and I will get coffee. It doesn't need to be paid to a Coinbase.
Thank you very much. I'm Gale, Brewer City Council, but I want to thank the real people who make this happen, the Weinberg Center for Older Justice, that UJCC will help you to that, Certainly Community Board 7, Apple Bank, the wonderful 20 Precinct at the Police Department, Manhattan DA's office, and from my office, the great Shula Cooter, Miller, John, Eric, and Olivia, and we will be sharing the Zoom recording and the slides and the scam prevention guide. Thank you all very much. I scammed. They took my entire pension. And so I had to spend 1 year, just so you know, breathing. I can't say I love the police, but I had to go to 2 court precinct. I don't have how many damn pieces of paper. I had to get things notarized. I didn't lose the money, but he didn't want it to happen again. And then the other day, I'm looking at my checking. Somebody from Bolivia. I don't even know where Bolivia is. I had to go on to Bolivia or something with some $109. I don't know what that was for. You have to check everything. It does make sense to freeze, I think, there will be 3 different credit agencies, but it's a pain in the neck. Because then when you want to go get another credit card, oops, you're frozen, Gale. You can't get your credit card now. Oh, hell. So it's always to be careful. And then the other day, some scammers look like Chase. I swear to God, it looks like the Chase insignia until you look at the return email and there's some godly book from wherever. You never heard of that email, and that's not real, and I'm not giving you anything. So you just have to say no, delete, 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 and then call the bank or call the financial institution. They are trying everything. I get once, I swear, I have a few credit cards almost every month. Somebody is on that credit card with a credit that I did not use. So you have to check constantly. Thank you for being here. We learned a lot. This is fantastic, and we'll do it again. Thank you, ACC.